rise for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. We always start out the monthly meeting with recognizing a staff member as the Employee of the Month. This month is Ed Kopis in the building department, and Ed does a great job, and I'll read what his supervisor, John Koss, wrote about him. Over the past 3 months, Ed has performed many tasks. He has spackled and painted all the interior walls of the galleries of 25 Jobs Lane. He's done an assortment of jobs at Village Hall. With the ongoing second floor project, he's currently opening buildings for the summer season, and he feels that Ed is a well-deserving Employee of the Month. So Ed's been with us for quite a long time, and we want to congratulate him and thank him for the job that he does for the village. We've got public comment section here. You have 3 minutes. Just come up to the front and identify yourself. I've got a list here. Jim Kennedy.
Evening.
Jim.
My name is Jim Kennedy. I live at 150 Harvest Lane in Southampton, and my comments this evening are directed at the condo project, the Corrigan property on Moses Lane. I am opposed to it because I think it's contrary to the village master plan and also the zoning code. And specifically, I think that it fails to meet the goals set forth by the zoning code. There's been a lot of discussion about the half-mile location, how to measure it, the distance. I started wondering really what the significance of it was. I went to the zoning code, and the first paragraph, I think it explains pretty well. Multifamily residences, it says, should be located in reasonable proximity to shopping services and other community facilities and with access to major roads. Now, to me, this means you want to locate it close enough so that it encourages people to walk to these facilities. In so doing, it reduces traffic and also parking problems. This makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense is the determination of an acceptable distance of the half a mile using a straight line as the crow flies method between the boundaries. Someone may just squeak by under a half-mile distance as the crow flies. But if you followed such a path on foot, it would require bushwhacking through thick bush and trees and walking on the Long Island Railroad tracks to end up only at a relatively obscure point in the village. Now, I've done this, and I know you're not going to be able to see the map, but this is a straight line between the boundary of the property and the boundary of the village office district, and I measured about 0.48 miles. Now, using this method to satisfy the code, I think, doesn't make sense at all. Not at all. It fails to satisfy the goal of reasonable proximity, and thus, in that sense, may even be discriminatory in nature. I think it's up to the trustees to maintain the spirit intended by the zoning code to limit inappropriate and harmful expansion. In other words, you got to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Jackie?
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline Skrbinski. I live at 76 Fox Hollow Lane in Southampton Village. And my comment is really a question directed at Mr. DePietris, that we've looked at the zoning map, and none of the residential buildings, according to the builder's site plan, fall within the half mile of the office district, and less than 2% of the entire property falls within the half mile. So my question is, hypothetically, given this, what would happen if this application was challenged in the courts? What is your opinion on how the courts might rule on this?
First of all, this is a decision that will ultimately be made, not by me, but by the Board of Trustees. So it would not be appropriate for me to, my role as village attorney is to provide legal advice.
But you must have
to the
an
Board of
opinion.
Trustees.
I'm asking you a hypothetical. I'm not asking you.
I actually don't think that's a fair question to ask him at this point in time, and just because of hypothetical, I mean, like you said, the decision will be the Board of Trustees, and he'll give us guidance on that. But
Okay, well, I hope you consider
I understand where you're coming from.
the numbers too. Bear
And,
that out, and of course, also in what Mr. Kennedy said, we concur. Okay, and so my husband and I, he can't be here, so I speak for both of us, and that we oppose the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aaron?
Hello. Just here representing my boss, John Paulson, at 340 First Neck in Southampton, in regard to the ferry for this coming summer season. He opposes it just on the premise that they acquired the residence not for, or the lake not for commercial use. They just feel that it could bring future unexpected problems, if possible. And that if it is going to go forward, has there been any environmental studies done on the lake to accommodate a ferry or any kind of boat traffic? We've had work done on the property, and we've had to go through the series of the trustees and inner science, various stuff. So just, with the boat traffic, and has there been that study done?
All that, they've been in front of the trustees, and InterScience is doing work in reference to the dockage down there. There's been plenty of studies on the lake as far as the lake quality and the quality of the water.
Which is pretty bad.
It's yeah, but there's boat traffic on that lake all the time as far as fishing tournaments that go on there. This is I think it's a solar powered boat that they have. That it's electric. It's electric solar powered,
Okay.
so it's not gas motor or anything like that. So
Also, is this going to open the door for if this is going to be a commercial venture and this goes down? Is that now going to open the door for canoeing and paddle boats or kayaks or something like that? And I think with that, these people spend a lot of money on security, cameras. They don't want somebody 10 feet off their property line taking pictures of their kids in the pool.
yeah.
We've already got helicopters, periodically during the summer. It's, these people make major headlines.
Yeah.
So if it is going to be imposed, could there be a boat lane of some kind where that boat can only be regulated in that area?
There'll be a route just up and down the middle of the lake, from what I understand. Hours are going to be very spread out, and the days of the week and the operations are going to be very limited.
Okay.
I mean, there's no restriction now on the lake when it comes to anybody could put a canoe in there, anybody could put a kayak into the
Right.
lake. But I mean, I think what his concern is that is the village planning on doing paddle boats, rentals, and all sorts of
Exposing.
Yeah, I don't think that I would not be in favor of something like that. I don't think
Okay.
the board members would be, and trust. And I think the water quality is never going to be at that level.
Right.
that we
Hopefully.
wanna put, yeah.
Someday.
So, but yeah, maybe with the work that we're doing, but We understand Mr. Paulson and many of the neighbors and their positions that they're in, and their security is very important to us.
Okay, that's great.
Big parts of this community.
And in the future, if there is going to be anything on that lake, maybe some kind of requirements to be some kind of boundary line, like maybe 50 feet within the encroachment of a house or something like that.
Well,
I mean,
it's-
I don't mind the fishermen. Their tournaments are great, and I think they should be, they should have complete access. But they had a guy like 10 feet off the, property line, on a Saturday morning, and it
Right.
just made her a little scared.
Yeah,
So.
I can respect that, so. But I don't think at this time there's any plans on restricting that, other than, just the one route up and down the middle of the lake, and
Limited.
it's all in the planning stage at this point in time.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Al. And Mr. Bachman, you were up here, but you were actually on the agenda for a presentation here, so I'm going to skip over, that way you'll have more time. Francis?
My name is Frances Genovese, and I'd like to ask the board to review two of the things we asked you at the previous meeting, and to ask if you've made any decisions on this or have discussed it. One is that you would revisit the zoning code with the idea of totally getting rid of that half-mile zoning provision for zoning relief, because it's a standard that's based on measurement, and not included in the law, the way it's written, is any form of measurement. There's no fixed point to where, and there's no discussion in that law of by what method you're going to determine this. Now, I believe Mr. DePietris said that it was going to be, that he had found precedent in law for as the crow flies. I think that what was cited was a long distance over a mountain, so that it was somewhere out in the far west, that as the crow fly was established as a measurement, probably written in the law at the time. I don't think that will hold for a short distance, like the one you're discussing. And this provision is discriminatory. It favors one or two people. That's it. And at the time, as we said before, at the time that the village adapted it, East Hampton also looked into it, but made the decision to inventory all of the properties that it would affect before they put the law in. Southampton didn't do that, but as we said, there were 3 people who would benefit by this. There's now one, I would say, which is the Corrigan property. And that's it. So we're asking again, would you consider taking this off the books at this point? It's never been used. It's never been tested. It's never been put through the courts.
It's under consideration.
It's a flawed piece of.
It's under consideration.
It's under consideration. So we have that, that from you. Okay. The second thing is to ask, have you considered denying this application now before it goes to the planning board?
We've had discussions on it. I know that there's going to be a presentation by the applicant's attorney for the 22nd, and I think we're going to not make any judgments until after that presentation.
But that's to the board. That's not to the planning board.
That's to this board, and
To this
then
board.
this board would have to make a decision to refer it to the planning board.
And just so that the people involved in this have a clear idea, you do have the discretion to deny it at this point, or you have the ability to deny it at this point.
That's one of the discussion points. If it meets all the criteria, and as per the code, I don't think the village board has the ability to deny to go to the planning board. But again, we have to wait until their attorney presents to us and see if it meets all the criteria.
Okay, we have another concern, and that is that we understand that Mr. DePietris shares an office with Mr. Flanagan, who's their attorney. So
He doesn't.
You don't?
No.
Okay, sorry, wrong information. And the third point that I have to make is that this applicant has asked for an entire neighborhood to devalue its property, to put what people consider egregious.
I don't know what based on what right, to ask this, but I thought I would pass along pictures of what this applicant does on his property. This is the mess that he's created at the corner of Bishop's Lane and Dodge Street. He has, as much as he can, recreated Rambo. There he's got his composting in the back. He's got an illegal road. He's got trucks dumping. He's got a hiring hall situation. There are tons of trucks parked there every day, people coming in the morning, all of that. So that is the kind of neighbor that's asking. And just one further point is that the developer and the owner of the property have gone out in an outreach to the neighborhood, which is their right. But the developer has maintained to certain members of the community that he is being deprived of his constitutional rights. I don't know what part of the Constitution he's reading. He doesn't own the property. He wants to buy the property contingent on a pre-approval that he can change the law so that it accommodates the amount of building he wants to secure the profit he wants. So I think that if anybody knows what part of the Constitution addresses this, then I think we should have that presented to the public as well, of why he thinks his constitutional rights are being abridged here.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? Okay, we're going to close the first public comment. We have board presentations. Chief Dennis Roy for the fire department.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. Dennis Roy, the Fire Chief of the Southampton Fire Department. I reside at 339 South Main Street. Upon your approval last month, you okayed us to go out and get a bid for two Class A pumpers. Only one company picked up the bid specs for it, and the bid opening was on Monday, and we have that bid here. The purchasing committee, which I had informed you, was quite thorough to begin with. I can assure you, went over every word in this, and there were no exceptions.
They're all out.
Yes, yes. There were no exceptions in here at all. It outlined exactly as we had presented it, and the savings are outlined as we discussed in the prior meeting with the board. I had spoken to Rich several times as early as this morning, and he's on board with the purchase. So I'm here tonight looking for your approval to go ahead and purchase these said vehicles.
Okay, yeah, he's not here tonight, but he and I had spoken, so I'm going to make a motion to authorize the village to accept the Pierce bid for the two Pierce Impel pumpers dated April 4th, 2014, in the amount of $1,278,000.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
It's just for people that half of this comes from the fire district, and the money's been put away over years in the capital reserve and has been designated for fire trucks and stuff. So
Correct. And there's quite a bit of cost savings that aren't reflected in that. There's probably there's a $30,000 each on the trade-ins, another $10,000 on visits out west. There's also a $30,000 savings for a 5% increase if we only purchase a single vehicle. So there's a lot of deductions that aren't listed on that also.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Guys,
Okay.
thanks a lot. Thanks for all that you guys do for this community.
Keep
Falling
pumping.
out of bed and keep doing it. And
Keep doing it,
thanks,
please.
All right.
guys.
Thank you.
So. Second board presentations, Mr. Bachman. Come on.
they could get rid of some of the water.
There you go.
Maybe they can.
Exactly.
Those pumpers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I thank you for putting me on the agenda to let me explore something which I think is important and would take a little bit more than 3 minutes. My name is Bruce Bachman. I live at 660 Halsey Neck Lane here in the village. I've been here since 1983, actually, as a resident. I want to talk about flood zone issues, which we have in our neighborhood, which in part have been created by new FEMA regulations with regard to the construction of new properties. And I'm going to read this to be sure that I do it carefully and that we get it clear. I can actually give you a copy of these written comments. According to the building department, in a conversation I had, new residential construction in designated flood zones must be raised 3 feet above the normal ground level. With construction of 4 houses completed or in process on Halsey Neck Lane and Meadowmere Place in the neighborhood between Meadowmere Lane and Meadow Lane, we're experiencing the results of that requirement. I'd like the village board to be aware of these results and see if we can take action to correct the problems. The first problem is that the floodplain is being reduced and the surrounding properties that are not raised 3 feet are suffering increased flooding. I discussed this with the building department and was told that I would be permitted to raise my house 3 feet if I wish to do it. And if you see my house, you'll find that that's not something that's even mildly possible. The second problem is the height of the new houses. Because the village building code, I understand, permits houses to be built 35 feet above the 3-foot rise, we're having very large houses being built that loom over the surrounding houses and are destroying both the appearance and the fabric of the neighborhood. It's that scale issue again, which comes up very often these days. If you take a look at pictures 1 through 6, and I'm sorry I don't have pictures for everybody here, but each member of the board has it. The first picture is a very large house on Meadowmere Place. For this discussion, it's not the size of the house itself that's the issue, but if you go to picture number 2, you'll see the size of this house as contrasted with the houses that are surrounding it. And I couldn't get it all in, the whole panorama, but the one on the left is representative of other houses in the neighborhood. And this is just a very big house in comparison to everything else. And part of its size is the fact that it's built on a 3-foot rise above the other houses in the neighborhood. If you go to picture 3, this is a house across the street from that big white house that I showed you. And if you go to picture 4, you'll see that house from Halsey Neck Lane, which is about a football field away, maybe more than that. It's actually 3 lots from where the picture was taken. You can see its size. The one to the right of it is the house that's in picture number 5. This was the first house that was built in the area, built up 3 feet, and I understand it's the full 35 feet above the original ground. I'm sorry, it's 35 feet above the 3-foot rise, which makes it a very tall house. And if you were to compare it to the house that was there before, that house would have shown up about 3 or 4 feet above the hedge. So we've got ourselves a situation of very large houses. Picture number 6 is a new house that's going up on Halsey Neck Lane. Again, it's been built up 3 feet. I know angles of pictures, can put relative height out of proportion, but this house is probably at least 5 feet above the houses on either side, 3 feet of which of that is taken up by the required buildup of land. Now, so that's the second problem, and it's interesting what these huge houses seem to do to neighborhoods. This neighborhood's formed a neighborhood association to see if they can stop this from continuing, and I have to tell you the tensions among the neighbors have been very fierce. Some of this stuff is getting negotiated out between property owners, but there's quite a disturbance in the neighborhood as a result of these very large houses being built. The third problem is runoff. Because the houses that are being built 3 feet above the ground are not required to provide offsetting drainage, there is a clear and visible runoff that is adding to the normal roadway flooding problems and the amount of flooding on neighboring properties. If you go pictures 7 through 11 here, this is Halsey Neck Lane. The first one is on the west side of Halsey Neck, opposite 660, right in front of 689. You go to picture 8, it's across the street. This is the front of my house. And we've got a circumstance in any case here because Halsey Neck seems to flow down from Meadowmere in one direction and from Meadow in the other, and it sort of meets. The low point is here, and it ends up, you can see, it ends up moving on other properties, even though I've been able to put a sneaky little small berm between the street and the property. This is the new famous Bilby Pond, which is north of my house. And again, it's a similar problem because of, well, there's flooding in this area, and this flooding, I think, is being exacerbated by some of the runoff. You go to picture 10. This is a small house, the property next to 660. You can see through the fog in the background that big house that's looming over the property, and it has runoff in 2 directions, which basically collects at this one spot and adds to the flooding problem. And finally, if you go to picture 11, I just happen to have the advantage of having a construction site which has water running off into the street. Even if they pave that driveway, eventually that runoff's going to continue, and it's going to add to that flooding problem which you've seen in the other pictures. So that's the third problem. The fourth problem is screening. The large and looming houses are required, theoretically, to have adequate screening to protect the privacy of the neighbors, and it really doesn't happen. That one house, if you could just go back to picture 5. This house, when it was built, was required to have screening. And there were trees between that house and my property. Over the last 2 years, these trees died. The trees were put in fill. You know, they weren't proper trees. The developer was clearly saving money and put in trees that weren't very healthy. They've all died. And there is absolutely no requirement that the owner here maintain that screening. There's just no requirement. There's no enforcement mechanism. There's nothing. So we have sort of 2 problems. We've got one is that they weren't required to have adequate screening at the beginning. And the second problem is that that screening died, and there's no provision to do anything. And I've had to put in screening on my side of the border all over the property to basically protect it from the invasions of privacy which have occurred. So, having summarized the few small problems here, I'd like to propose a couple of things and ask you to consider them. I'd like to propose that the height of new construction on land raised above normal ground level as a result of FEMA regulations and maybe otherwise be limited to, say, 30 feet above the raised level rather than 35 feet that's available to them now. I think that would make a big difference in our neighborhood, in the future, and possibly in other neighborhoods which may have the same problem. I'd like to propose that where houses are built on raised land, the drainage that substantially mitigates runoff to adjacent properties and roadways be required. The best answer, of course, would be the requirement that everybody put in a big storage tank which takes water from the roof and from the land and stores it and is used in the summer months for irrigation. I know that's a big deal, but it's done all over the world. There's really not a reason we shouldn't be able to do it here, particularly if the houses are raised up 3 feet and you can put those tanks in the basement. Somebody might have to give up a media room, but that's another issue. I'd also like to propose that screening for houses on raised properties be adequate to protect the privacy of the surrounding properties, and that it must be maintained for a period of, say, 5 years to assure that screening lasts. And those are the three specific proposals. And finally, I'd like to ask the village to set up, or at least to analyze the whole system along there in Halsey Neck. To look at the drainage system to reduce the continuous flooding and the flooding which is, coming off the new construction, just getting worse every year. As you know, the street's very busy. Everybody comes down there to Dune Road and to the beaches. We have household staff and maintenance teams and public workers and tourists and construction workers and residents, and it's just a continuous stream up and down there. And this flooding now is narrowing the roads, so people are playing a little bit of dodgems, and something's going to happen. It's not like it's off in one of the side streets. This is a major thoroughfare. So I'd ask you to take a look at what sort of drainage might be put in there. I'm afraid it might require a pumping system, but I'm not an engineer, I'm just speculating. And the final thing about this is a drainage system could really help us in that area with regard to some of the hurricane problems we've had. A lot of us have spent a lot of money the last 2 years basically dealing with hurricane problems resulting from the flooding. And if anything, if this system in any way mitigated that problem, that would be a great blessing. So that's what I'd like to present to you. I'd like you to think about it. I'm not coming to criticize anybody.
That's okay.
I'm saying,
No,
let's
no,
deal
no,
with the
that's fine.
problem. We got one.
It's, I know that Gary Gillespie, our superintendent of public works, has been working on this because the issue was brought to building department last year in reference to, what's that?
The drainage?
The drainage right here, especially the picture number 9. And so I know that in the budget this year, that we did put money in the budget to address some of the drainage issues on Halsey Neck, because you're right, it's a heavily trafficked area. People are riding bikes, they're jogging, they're walking, campers going back and forth. And the road is narrow. And so I do know that the money was put in there for us to do work in that area and they've had surveyors go and look at the volume of drainage pools in the area and try to move water around. But with the zoning regulation changes, I'm going to turn that over to Michael and let Michael work with the building department. No, the truth is, but it's some great things that you're pointing out. Some of the stuff we're already talking about already. But we'll go back and we'll work with John Foster on this. Trying to capture runoff of properties from going to the streets is something that you should be able to contain your own runoff on your property. You should be doing that anyway. And if it's not happening, we need to get it addressed.
Yep.
So, Bill?
I just wanted to ask Rick a question. Is there any reason, one of the first things I think we should address, if there's no legal reason why we can't, and that is this matter of, in the floodplain, FEMA's got this regulation that you can raise the property, or either must raise it or can raise it, whichever.
I think it's
And so-
must.
And
I
so
think
you
it's
end
must.
up with a 38-foot house, and is there any reason why we can't say that in the floodplain, the maximum height of a house shall be like 32, 31, whatever we choose, but at least enough to offset the 3 feet that they're gaining over everybody else that's been there for a very long time?
That's potentially something that could be done, yes.
FEMA can't come in and say they're entitled to something like that. We're the boss.
The FEMA regulations as to how much a house has to be elevated, et cetera, we can't modify those.
But we can give them a
But
different
our own height
net, a
regulation
net
is not a
height.
FEMA issue, it's a,
Good,
a zoning issue.
great.
Yeah,
But, it's not, it may not necessarily be as simple as it sounds, because all the time you have pre-existing houses that don't conform with FEMA, and they want to elevate them to provide the protection against flooding that is the goal of the FEMA regulations. So sometimes you have these conflicts, and they're not necessarily easily resolved. But it's certainly something that we can take a look at and do something with.
I can certainly assure you that in our neighborhood, you could raise every house more than 3 feet and never come close to the height of the existing house, of the new houses. It's a small neighborhood, it was part of its charm. I must admit, I don't have a small house, but my house isn't anywhere near as high as the houses that have been built next to me. And we can stand on my roof and see 5 or 6 feet of houses in 4 spots where these new houses have been put in. I also, the reason I brought it here is I think it requires a multifaceted approach. We've been to the the Architecture Review Board. They can't really deal with it because they don't deal with drainage. I go to the building inspector, he says, well, I don't deal with it, it's required by FEMA. And I think the village needs to, somehow you guys need to coordinate this whole effort to make it a reasonable situation and see if we can protect this neighborhood from the bottom up and at the top.
I think it's everybody.
No, I'm just using my neighborhood as an example.
But I think that
Because it did us first.
runoff of the properties, especially, I thought they were, I thought everybody was supposed to capture their runoff onto their own property. And you're incorrect on that, but I think it's something that we can look at with the building department.
Well, yeah.
And the village board.
I mean, Halsey Neck, there's a couple of problems there. I mean, that's originally a floodplain in itself geographically. So you are more prone to flooding than some of the other places in the village. New construction, without a doubt, it definitely is directed to retain whatever runoff they have on their properties. And if you see a problem there, then it should be approached to the building department, no question.
Because you can see it coming off.
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's an issue.
That's easy to.
Yeah, and that's an issue, and that needs to be addressed. Height-wise, I think all this board has been recently discussing height. It's not as big of a problem in the larger lot areas. But obviously, your indication in the photos are pretty graphic that there is a problem developing there, and that needs to be addressed. And without a doubt, in the smaller lot areas, height is a big issue.
I'm aware.
Because obviously you have
looking.
less area and you're more encroaching on your neighbors. So all the things you really brought up, it's great that you brought them up, but they're things that we're pretty well aware of, and it's tough to come up with the exact answers.
We have, I sent a memo to the chair of the planning commission, asking the planning commission to evaluate height. I sent them some of the height restrictions from neighboring municipalities. Village of East Hampton did a very extensive research on it and has a pretty in-depth height restriction law. And I know that that's one of the things that they're looking at this point in time.
Well, we should send these photos on to the planning commission, because
And you can see where it's hot,
Did a good job.
whereas this is a fact, well, I live there. And, I say the other thing, there's going to be another 3 or 4 lots coming up for sale here pretty soon. I just know the longevity of the occupants. And please get this done before the rest of it happens in our neighborhood. And then if we help other neighborhoods by doing this, fabulous. Thank you.
Big help.
Thanks for your
Really?
presentation, Bruce.
Mark,
Any
if we can,
questions?
I do think, what he's suggesting, we all realize how rational it is, and that we should really expedite this, because while it's funny, I remember when the first big house went up down there, people were drawing my attention to it, and then they heard about this floodplain, and you think that there are rules that you can't do anything about, but I think we could do something about this, and that the quicker we get on it, the better.
This gives new meaning to big.
Yes, yep. Anyhow, that's just,
Great.
I'd like to expedite it if possible.
I know people who live on Meadowmere, and not Meadowmere Place, but Meadowmere. And they have always had issues whenever we have a big rainstorm, flooding that rolls across their property down into their basements, that has just accumulated, and a lot of it has been created from some of the newer houses that are elevated. I would think that if you have a new house that has to be elevated by law, that we should require drainage, because water finds its way. So if it's collecting on their property for a number of reasons, the ground is partially frozen. We have a huge rainstorm like we had 2 weeks ago. It collects on the property, and it's not going to stay there. It's going to roll off, and it's going to go into the street, and it's going to go to the lowest property. And that's the problem that you have over there at this point. So I do feel that it has to be part of our building code in some way, that if they are in the floodplain and their property is elevated, they will have to put in proper drainage on their own property so that it doesn't roll out into the road and roll onto the lower properties. The lower properties are at risk already because they're there to begin with. And they actually, what they're saying in the building department is true. You could raise up your house, but not many people are going to do that. It's cost prohibitive.
You can't raise mine.
Right.
We've already asked.
Yeah.
Right.
Impossible.
So I think, I mean, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, we have.
And so I think we really need to act on that.
Yeah. All right, great. Okay, thanks, Bruce. Appreciate your time. Okay, we got public hearings here, local law, historic burial grounds. Rick?
Okay, as I mentioned last month when we scheduled this for a public hearing, and as you're aware, there are some historic burial grounds that are owned by the town of Southampton. Some are situated within the village, some are situated outside of the village, etc. The town, I think it was late last year, the town adopted regulations prohibiting certain things on historic burial grounds owned by the town. Those regulations, in theory, apply to all their historic burial grounds, but when it's situated in the village, the town has no practical method of enforcing them because the town can't do a local law that applies within a village. So the town has asked us to adopt a local law which implements their regulations on historic burial grounds and make it part of our code so that if there is a violation, it could be enforced as a violation of the village code. So that's the purpose of this local law, and as I already said, it tracks the town regulations.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on local law amending the village code by adding a new chapter entitled Historic Burial Grounds Owned by the Town.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've had the explanation. Any board members have any comment in reference to this?
No, except that I do know that the town is working very hard on a lot of these older historic burial grounds and in cleaning them up and cleaning the tombstones. And I think they want to continue to be able to do it. And I think it's a great thing.
Me too. Any further comments from anyone?
No.
Anybody from the public would like to make comment in reference to the local law? No? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second? All in favor?
Right.
Rick, would like to take action on this tonight?
Okay, it would be a motion to enact this proposed local law as local law number 3 of 2014.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Irving?
Aye.
Mayor Epley?
Aye.
Trustee McCann?
Aye.
Trustee Hattrick?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay. We've got the 2014-15 proposed budget here.
Okay. This is the first of two public hearings. To go right to the tax cap calculation, as you'll know, which was enacted 3 years ago, we had a tax levy last year of $19,967,512. The tax cap of 2% was actually reduced to consumer price index of 1.48% this year. And the tax-based growth factor, which was over 3% last year for the village, is only 1.74%. So those two factors combined equal a allowable growth factor, allowable growth levy of 3.25%, which equates to $648,096, and that's on the last page of your presentation there. The proposed budget at this point is for $26,748,411, a 4.42% increase, which would change the rate from 18.187 to 18.44, a 1.38% percentage increase. Going to your revenue page, I just want to highlight some of the major changes that we put into place here. We raised the building inspector fees projected for next year from $975 to $1,003,000. In the current, as of today, we're already at $1,004,000, so hopefully the $1,003,000 is a realistic number, and hopefully a little more on the conservative side. Beach revenue we raised from $732 to $744. Last year we realized $796,000. Obviously, it's all predicated on the weather for the summer. And outside fire prevention went from $870 to $922. That's contractual, along with public safety dispatch, $155 to $160. That's contractual. As far as expenditures are concerned, on page 2, the legislative, the largest increase there was in trustees special projects, and that's basically for 2 new grants that are coming in this year, and that increase is actually offset by the revenue that is being funded by the federal government, but it's just a presentation on both sides of the equation there. Next highlighted item will be on building maintenance, which is page 5. We added a category there, seasonal building maintenance, which we've never had before. But in an effort not to hire full-time workers, we wanted to try to get some seasonal people in there during the course of the height of the season. On the police budget, which is page 7, that budget is actually down $47,000, even though it's including 2 new hires and 1 new ordinance inspector. We lost some high-paying police officers this year, which obviously helped in some savings there. And even in radio operators, we have 1 new hire in that budget, and it's only up $15,799. On the building inspector page, which is page 9, contractual services are down $40,000, and that's projected with them moving over into this building when the renovation on the second floor is completed. On the ambulance page, we put in here, subject to further discussion, doubling the salaries there because their desire is to go to full-time coverage there versus just the coverage that we have on a weekend. And the equipment budget is up $45,000 because they're looking at carrying the narcotics, and obviously they have to have safes and secure facilities to maintain those. With respect to page 15, we had a 30% increase in our workman's comp cost, which has been unfortunately going up every year. We are taking some pretty aggressive steps to try to curb that and keep those numbers under wraps, working with Cook Marin on that. In the last few pages, you have a variance analysis there, which will highlight the areas that cause a fluctuation in the budgets, which is the trustee special projects. Some certiorari claims, that's up $150,000. Workers' comp, $180,000, and some changes in debt offset by building inspector fees and federal aid. And on the next page, you have an 8-year summary of the tax rate, the levy, and the increase in taxable value.
So, make a motion to open a public hearing on 2014-15 proposed budget.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. From the board wants to make any comment in reference to this? I just would like to point out that we, in the trustees special projects, we did put $100,000 in to engage a consultant for the sewer district and sewer into the village business district. That's something that the planning commission is working on. They did a presentation last week on it. Some of the members who are here tonight were at that, and it's a long process, but we need to take that step. So we put that money in there. Anybody else want to make comment in reference to the budget?
Well, I just want to make it, actually, to thank Steve for doing such a diligent job on the budget, because it is very difficult, even in a small community like us, to keep underneath the cap, and you really, have conversations back and forth. You had some great ideas and good input, so
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would also like to point out that there is, in the, when the proposed budget, there was $200,000 worth of drainage that we're actually going to include that with
It's actually,
$600,000 worth of paving.
That's correct, right?
So we're bonding that out. The $200,000 worth of drainage was focused in on the Halsey Neck area and some other areas around some of our ponds. Any other comments? I'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public would like to speak? Okay. We're going to, there are copies of the budget that are right up front, and I encourage everybody to take a copy of it. We're going to keep the public hearing open. The next one, it will be at the next meeting on the
22nd.
22nd, 5 o'clock.
Mark,
Just come on up here for the,
a question, what drove up the debt service?
just come on over here.
What drove up the debt service at the bottom there? Is that tied to the special projects?
No, actually, we had purchased some ambulance equipment last year, and we had bonded out $600,000 for the World War I memorial and the renovation for the second floor, so those payments are coming into this year. We did propose putting another $600,000 bond in for next year, potentially for other equipment that we do need coming down the road.
I see.
It's just that our capital reserves are low as far as what we can use right now, so the option is to bond it out.
I see, okay.
Okay, but we do have, in the next year, we have 3 bonds that are maturing that will not be here in the 2015, 2016 year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to make comment? Joe?
Just looking at the increase of the ambulance salaries, could you explain what the nature of?
The, right now, what we have is, we have part-time employees that work a 12-hour shift at the ambulance barn. And, what's that?
Isn't it weekends?
No, it's every day, 7 days a
okay.
week.
I'm sorry.
And what the ambulance has asked us to do is to take and have part-time employees 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And that's what that is. So it's a discussion topic that was brought up when we did our year-end reports. It was one of the goals that they had put forth for the 2014-15 year. A lot of it's driven by the volume of calls that have gone up. You know, they're at the 700-800 number on the calls. A lot of it's some of the nursing home stuff that goes on, and they're trying to keep the response time as low as possible. And then there were, and the other piece was another major increase in the ambulance budget was for the storage of narcotics, which you have to, the DEA has all sorts of regulations, temperature control, you know, security controls and stuff.
But is that $200,000 based on an hourly
Yes,
projection?
Hourly projection.
And how much would the an hour be?
I think they're about 20 or 20.
They're between $19 and $21 an hour, based on their experience and training.
Yeah, we're trying to get, you know, they're all EMTs, some
I
are,
understand that.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else from the public would like to make a comment? Okay, we're gonna hold the public hearing open till the 22nd, so I encourage everybody to take a copy of the budget and come back then to make any kind of comments you'd like to in reference to it. So, okay. All right. We're gonna go
All right,
to-
and communications to the board. Last meeting, we had a request from the Southampton Public Schools for their Special Olympics to use of the showmobile. We did approve the event itself, but there was a question on the use of the showmobile. They had originally requested it for Saturday through Monday, May 19th, which obviously we had to clarify some staffing, so Brenda worked with them, and they actually cut it down to 1 day just for Sunday, and have agreed to pay the going rate for our staff to bring it there, set it up, and to remove it by the end of the day.
All right, great. Okay.
So I'd like to, can we approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the use of the showmobile in accordance with their letter on, actually, they asked for Saturday, Is it in accordance with the
Yeah,
adjustments made?
Right, for May 18th.
Yeah, Sunday, May 18th.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next item is we have a request from Davis Construction to relocate a house, and I believe we have a representative here tonight.
Hi, David Gilmartin from the law firm Farrell Fritz. We are looking for a permit from the board under your Chapter 145 to move a building which is more than 12 feet in width. The background of our request is the property where the house is located is 370 First Neck Lane, is owned by the Baker family. They made an agreement with the Shinnecock Nation to move the house that's currently on site to a location on the nation's property. We went through your AHRB, got approval from them. We have a demolition permit from the building department, and the last piece of this is to get a permit from this board to be able to go through the move. We submitted a letter yesterday under Davis Construction. I believe that meets all of the requirements of your Chapter 45 to issue the permit. I have Gary Seff from Fountainhead Construction and Guy Davis from Davis Construction. We can try and answer any questions that you have, but I think it's a pretty straightforward request, and we'd respectfully request that you grant it.
There's copies of the code behind that letter,
Okay.
as far as the requirements.
Rick, did you have any comment on this?
No,
Anybody from the board have any
it
comment?
requires your approval because has a width of more than 12 feet.
Yeah.
And, the code says that it can't be done between June 15th and September 15th. I presume you're planning to do it.
We'd move it tomorrow if you give a permit tonight.
So,
So it's on the trailer or anything? I drove down there.
Don't tell John.
Anybody from?
I don't know how much of a bond you want to require. I don't remember us having one of these in a long time.
Right.
The code says a bond of not less than $2,500, and then public liability insurance of at least $50,000 for property damage, and at least $100,000 for injury to one person and $500,000 for injury to any number of persons. Those numbers seem kind of low in this age. This code looks like it was adopted back in 1982, but it says not less than, so you can require whatever policy limits you want on the insurance.
What are your?
Davis Construction's fully insured, so I'm not sure we can add the village as an additional insured to that policy. Do you know the limits on it?
It's probably a 1 million, 2
So we would, that would be fine.
What about electric? How much is there overhead that you gotta move?
Nope. It's in the letter. It's low enough that we don't have to move any.
David, is there any advantage to moving it on a day like a Saturday or a Sunday where you don't have the business traffic, and does that make any sense?
That's possible.
Seems to me that you're going to use it on Hill Street, I guess, eh?
Correct.
As long as the church isn't in session.
Even if it is, it's a lot less than what's on there Monday through Friday, you know?
Yeah, there's just a lot of cars parked on.
Yes, yeah, yes, that's true. Yeah, it would be better not to avoid that. But a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, something like that.
Agree to move it on a Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
Any other
Business district
comments?
will- No, except the business district won't be happy because they'll think it's going to tie up Hill Street, people coming in and out.
What's
I know you can't
the
win.
time frame? I mean, how long would it take to move this house from First Neck to the Shin?
It's going to be in 4 sections. It's going to be 4 separate moves.
Okay.
We're moving
Actually, why don't you
inside.
come on up to the microphone so we can get it on.
So it's 2 hours
Camera,
each. It
whatever.
says 2 hours, I think.
The structure's separated into 4 sections, so we're going to move it in 4 different times. And they'll be very, very small sections. So the amount of time from First Neck to the Shinnecock Nation, we'll probably be about an hour, hour and a half.
Okay.
So we'll be going a little better than walking speed down Hill Street, and we should have no problems getting it there. And we can do it in successive Saturdays, two on one Saturday and two the following Saturday, if you want to do that.
So each piece is an hour and a half, or?
More or less an hour and a half, yeah.
Okay,
each
so
piece.
4 hours.
Okay.
All right.
Is our police department fully conversant with what you're planning to do so that they can
We've
help you?
moved buildings before. The police in Southampton town, they pulled escorts from their budget a while ago, so we were usually on our own. I don't know if you want to supply us with any police escorts for the move. That would be up to you, but we can escort it ourselves if we have to and do traffic control.
I think you ought to at least notify the police department that you're doing
we
it,
do.
when you're doing it.
Oh,
so
we
that-
notify the police, we
They're
notify
good
the
judgment.
fire, we notify the ambulance company,
Good.
so everyone's aware where we'll be at what time period. So if there's any type of emergency, they can divert traffic and get to any emergency. So they'll all be very well aware of what we're doing.
Yeah, you've done this a couple times.
Yeah.
So. So, okay. Any other questions? Chief, would you like to make a comment in reference to this?
I actually would.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I was here long enough ago to have been here for a house move. The only thing I would say is it would be very helpful for us if you did it either early in the morning or in the evening, so the traffic isn't, at its peak. Beyond that,
Early Saturday mornings would be perfect.
when we did it, when I was here for it, they started at about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And it was a lot less traffic then. It was like 26 years ago. But, ideally, the least traffic on Hill Street, whatever period of time you think you can.
As long as you're fine with 5 in the morning as far as code enforcement. And
Yeah, that works for us. That would be great. That's all I have to say about it.
Well, I'm going to I would probably defer that to the building department to let those guys,
Because you may
Yeah.
get some complaints about our Mack truck running at.
yeah, that was going through my head.
It's 8
Yeah,
o'clock on a Saturday, so.
yeah. So,
If you allow us, that's fine.
what I think what we should do is, what's that?
Yeah, because we have noise, we have
Right, the
regulations,
noise
and
restrictions
also
and
we
stuff,
have
yeah.
regulations as to when you can do construction.
Right.
Right.
And
Well,
that's too
yeah.
early, so.
So what I'd like to do is what we'll do is, authorize it tonight, and then we'll let the building department, you guys work out with the building department. Because if you do it early in the morning, if you try to get on Hill Street at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, it's crazy, so,
Right.
but, and if you meet with our times at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, again, there's a lot of traffic at 8 o'clock on a Saturday too, so we'll let,
If you hold the traffic up, it's going to make noise.
right,
So I think you kind of
yeah.
it's going to be
So let's
whatever it is.
just get it done, okay? So, I'll make a motion to authorize Davis Construction to move the Baker residence at 370 First Neck Lane in accordance with the letter dated April 9, 2014, and that they work out the time operations with the building department.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next one is from Southampton Montessori School. With spring finally here, Southampton Montessori School once again looks forward to our annual field day at Agawam Park. Thanks to the generosity of Southampton Village, this has become a favorite and much anticipated school event. We would like to reserve Thursday, May 22nd with Tuesday, May 27th as a rain date for this year's field day, which would run between the hours of 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. The activities will include relay races, a picnic lunch, and kite flying. The village's cooperation in notifying the police and maintenance departments to provide for parking and restroom use is greatly appreciated. Thank you for your kind consideration in response to this request. Irene Hope Gaza.
Yeah, this is always a fun event for these kids, so it's fun to see them. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Southampton Montessori School to hold their field day in accordance with their letter dated April 7, 2014.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, resolutions, item 1, resolve the reading of the minutes for the work session on March 25th, 2014 be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator. That the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the claims for warrants dated April 10th, 2014 totaling $218,133.95, warrant 14 general fund, 62640 warrant 11 trust fund, and 7500 warrant 11 capital bond fund, and the village payrolls for the period from March 21st, 2014 to April 3rd, 2014 be ordered and approved. Got a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Discussion? Page 1, Aldo Andrioli, April engineering fee, $3,250. Atlantic Coast Embroidery, ambulance shirts and jackets, $3387.70. 2 payments to Barnwell House of Tires for the garage, $2,820.56 and $3,625.74. Black Bear Company, bulk oil for the garage, $1,722.60. Black Gold Industry, 12 tons of coal patch for the Highway Department, $1,444.51. Blue Tarp Financial, sandblasting cabinet for the garage, $2,051.70. Blue Water Communications Group, fingerprint scan software for the Police Department, $1,005.66. BSN Sports, baseball field supplies for the Parks Department, $2217.64. CSA Employment Benefit Fund, April Insurance, $22,590.28. Cash Productions, March videotaping, $1,486.65. Page 3, Commission of Taxation and Finance, first quarter MTA tax, $9,145.14. Cook Marin for insurance, $1,964.60. Corazini Asphalt, the final payment on the SS Safe Routes to School grant, $11,567.95. Delalio Sod Farms, seed for the Parks Department, $4,705. EMT Governmental Accounting Services for March, $1,104. Finance Manager processing the W-2s and 1099s for 2013, $1,162.50. Firematic Supply, a pump rebuilding kit for the Fire Department, $4,799.60. Rick Fowler, reimbursement for EMS conference, $2216.93. Page 5, flowing on to page 7, Herrick Hardware, March Supplies, $1,092.91. Home Depot Credit Services, DPW cabinets, $1,229.40. Ivan Biogreens, lime and fertilizer for the Parks Department, $8,739.50. Page 8, Johnson Electrical, traffic signal maintenance for March, $1,350. Long Island Cauliflower Association, Ballfield Clay and Soil, $1,716.80. Page 9, Malvisi Equipment's 10-foot push plow, $4,829. Messiano Consulting, grant writing services through March, $1,737.50. Page 10, Morgan Water Supply, supply for March, $2,465.84. Page 11, Nextel Communications, March cell phone bill, $1,314.27. Norsec and Sons, carting for March for the Highway Department, $4,352.40. And New York State Unemployment Insurance for the first quarter 2014, $4,208.23. Page 12, PSE&G, electric for the Fire Department, $4,206.01. Page 13, RCF Lewis Heating Oil, $3,912.91. Sadie Levine, CPA's 2013 audit, $16,083.33. Page 14, Southampton Fire Department reimbursed the Chiefs Conference, $13,298.21. Sovereign Medical AED pads for the Ambulance Department, $1,014. Testing Unlimited, 2 payments for aerial ladder testings for the fire trucks, $1,590 and $1,800. Page 15, Vince Toomey, March fees, $6,787.89 for legal fees. Trius repairing a plow and a mount for the garage, $3,995.98. United Metro Energy, 2,724 gallons of gas, $7,821.69. Velvet Top Products, highway line painting supplies, $4,090.75. And Verizon phone bill for PD, $1,618. Page 16, Wainscott Sand and Gravel, highway sand and topsoil, $2,199.72. And Ed West, Fire Department medical reimbursement for $1,000. And Roy Wines, again, medical reimbursement for $1,000. Discussion? I'm sorry, one more is on the capital reserve. Always elevator, progress payment towards the elevator for the second floor, $7,500. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate overages for the period March 25th, 2014 through April 10th, 2014. We have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Item 1, 3250 into auditor contractual from trustees contractual. Item 2, 1,000 to clerk telephone from clerk equipment. Number 3, 10,000 to law contractual from trustees special projects. Item 4, 1,495 into MTA tax, 1,687 into unemployment insurance coming from employee benefits fire, 3,182. Next one is 2,000 into unallocated insurance coming from claims. Next one is 5,000 to fire utilities from fire equipment. Next one is 10,000 into highways contractual from highway supplies. And the next one is 9,600 central garage contractual from highway supplies. And the last one is 4,000 to building supplies, 6,000 to buildings utilities, with 10,000 from street lighting supplies. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, resolve that the Board of Trustees approve the hiring of Joseph Prokop, 175 Route 25A East Setauket, New York 11733, to represent the village at the village general election on Friday, June 20th, 2014, from 12 noon to 9 p.m. at the Levitas Center, Pond Lane, Southampton, at a rate of $200 an hour. Have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. This is only on a standby basis if needed. He's not there for the full time.
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the appointment of James Durier as a probationary member of the Agawam Engine Company Number 1 effective April 10th, 2014. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one, resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the hiring of the following part-time seasonal police department personnel for the 2014 season. Traffic control specialist at $16 an hour, Thomas Cummings Jr., Spencer Cannon, Caitlin Ryan, John Donovan Jr., Kristen Lynch, Sean Ryan, Carlos Rodriguez. Part-time court officer at $26 an hour, George Ronan. Part-time police officer at $26 an hour, Christina Harrigan, Robert Rossi, Andrew Cassell, and Edward Reed. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second?
Discussion?
Chief, would you like to make comment on what this is?
This is actually a partial list for the traffic control specialist because a bunch of guys are still in school. We didn't have time to interview them, so I didn't want to hire them without, meeting them. One of the reasons why we're hiring George Ronan is because Christina Harrigan normally helps out in the court, but since we've had the retirements in the police department, we're going to need her in the street. Can't bring George back in his original job title, but he wants to come back and help out. So it would just be 2 half-days a week when the court's in session. And, 2 of the seasonal police officers are actually going to be considered for a full-time job. So it would be good to give them a little experience and see how they do with us.
Great.
And otherwise, it's the usual thing that we do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else for the chief there? Well, we've got him.
Welcome George back. Big George?
Big George.
Big George.
Yeah.
Great.
So,
I spoke to the court already there. They have no problem with it.
okay.
But he's, he comes out of my budget, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, discussion items. First item is commercial parking permits. What's been happening is that we're having contractors coming in asking for permission to park 10 cars along Meadow Lane for construction going on. And what they do is that they now take that letter and they Xerox it, and you can have 20 cars parking on a lane. So I was talking with Eileen, and we came up with this suggestion of pre-numbered permits like this that cannot be duplicated due to the color. And we would do a log that Joe Smith Contracting gets permits 1 through 10, so that if we know they're down there and they have others, they're not, these would be required in there. The question also comes up, do we want to charge a $10 fee for each one of these permits for a 30-day period? So, because a lot of times it's, we need it for a month and then they're 2 months. So it's another thought about going this route.
And is this throughout the village?
Mm-hmm.
I thought they weren't allowed to park in the village right of way.
Well, they park along the streets, and it's not only Meadow Lane, but for the contractors, they need a place to park, and we do give them parking exception letters. But like I said, a lot of times they represent that they're going to have X amount of cars, and it's 2 times X amount of cars. And then the period of time that they need it for is usually gets extended.
Didn't we pass a law? Construction workers weren't allowed to.
Well, it was about the base of the trees, and they were not supposed to be putting like dumpsters and trucks parked along there.
Well, I think we should try to push them to park on their properties.
Yeah.
As opposed to the street side.
Absolutely.
So I think.
But a lot of the properties, they can't be due to the
Yeah.
nature of the size of the property.
And I mean.
Even if they have 10 contractors there, and, you know, or 5 trades, whatever, with
Yeah,
trucks.
I mean, sometimes they can't because they have so many contractors, but it is really obnoxious to have them parked. And they also, quite frankly, tear up the neighbors'
Absolutely.
lawns and properties and stuff as they spin out and turn around.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think making it difficult for them is a good thing.
Rick, do you have any comment on this?
No, you don't
Okay.
have to grant parking exceptions at all, so if you want to have certain conditions to go with them,
All right. Now, if we did this, would we have to do a public law on this? Or does it just be a board policy? Or what would we have to do? If we were to create that permit with a fee associated with that? Would you like to look that up and think about it?
yeah, I don't,
Might be a code amendment if
I
there's a
don't
fee
think
involved.
there's anything in our code right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember, is there anything in our code right
I
now
don't
that you're
believe so,
aware
no.
of?
I just didn't know if we're charging a fee for this. We'd have to have something in a code that would allow us the opportunity to charge the fee for this
Yes.
parking exception. So,
And you gotta make sure it doesn't get abused.
right.
It'd be pretty good to get a $10 parking pass for the beach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
I would like to, if in fact we are gonna go this route, I would like, when they apply for this, and I guess it's being done through the building department, or would be done
No,
through Village
it comes
Hall?
through here.
I'd like for them to receive a set of rules as it relates to the village right-of-way,
Mhm.
because we spent a lot of time concerned about our village trees and the compacting of the soil around the trees. And you know and I know, if they're gonna pull off of the road and be on the village right-of-way, they're not gonna even think about that.
Mhm.
And I want them to think about it before they pull there, so that if in fact they're in violation, they can possibly receive a ticket for that.
Yeah. So many trees are dying at the 5 to 6 year post-construction time frame because of the root system's damaged because of this.
Right.
And Gary put a lot of work and effort into it. Why don't we just go back and we'll have Rick look at what we'd have to do for this, and then everybody think about it. We'll come back at the work session.
Okay.
We'll talk about what our thoughts are on it. Okay.
Okay. Next item is request from Massapequa Park Bicycle Club for their run through the village, or ride through the village on 9/21/2014, which is their annual event.
Yeah, they do this all the time, and so I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Massapequa Bike Club to ride through the village as they go from Massapequa to Montauk.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last thing I just want to bring up is just regard to where we are with the financials. We just finally got a draft. Unfortunately, as you know, John Lundy passed away very untimely, and there has been a huge delay with regard to them providing the audit financials. But I just have a draft at this point in time, which I've gone through, and we should have final copies soon. And I'm sure one of the partners, as John always did, would make a presentation to the board. But I just want to highlight how the May 31st, 2013, as far as the fund balance is concerned, because we do have the fund balance policy that we did not meet the previous year. But the total fund balance for the village, which includes all the capital reserve, increased $2,003,000 to a total of $8.4 million. the general fund balance increased by $1.3 million to $3.2 million. So we're back well over the compliance threshold with regard to the fund balance policy. We're in pretty good standing.
Great, thanks for bringing that, yeah. So, yeah, John Lundy's a big loss to not only us, but quite a few municipalities around, so, good man. Okay, so we had comments from board members. Trustee Yaz is at the Yankee Red Sox game. He's rooting for the wrong team. So, Trustee Irving.
Last week, the Planning Commission met to begin a discussion on the sewer system for the village of Southampton. And I just want to thank them for their efforts. They did a great job. They had a terrific presentation, and I think it was fairly well received. We certainly, if we can control the nitrogen levels that are coming out of the village district, and we can control some of that runoff coming down Windmill Lane, both efforts which we've tried, we certainly will have a lot better lake out there than we do presently, and I think that's a good thing for the entire community. So I just want to thank them.
Thanks. Thanks for pushing that and moving that sewage district forward, Michael. Nancy?
I don't really have that much, except that the dog park is underway, and they were paving today, and are we having, I think the opening is June 10th, is it?
June 8th.
8th.
Sunday,
Okay.
June 8th.
So it's coming along.
Bill?
Two quick things. Nancy and I met with Gary Gillespie here a couple of weeks ago and encouraged him to supervise the highway and parks departments in their efforts to really clean up the village business district after such a difficult winter. And I was going to encourage Mark and Steve, maybe Steve, you could do it. Mark's got more important things to do, but I find that if I call them and thank them for good work, which today the place looked great, I thought, and I think they're extending themselves, and if you can thank them on behalf of the board, I think frankly it may encourage them to continue to extend themselves. One more thing, a sad thing, Vivian Walsh passed away here recently, and he was the icing on the concert in the park cake from the very first year we started, which was I think 26 or 27 years ago. And he was just such a grand person, and I am really saddened to see anybody who made so many people so happy. And we had the good sense to always feature him in the last concert in the park. And he was a pièce de résistance, and I will certainly miss him. One other thing, I've given you all copies. You know, I'd spoken to Steve here recently about trying to arrange something with the DEC so that we can face this issue of the little deck and the final part of the walkway down at Dune Beach. And this just shows you these three photographs. And the highway department fellows are afraid to shovel this off and clear it off because they say the DEC could descend on us and send us to purgatory or something. And but you know, there's a couple of things to this. I always wanted to make it a little bit bigger. It's 12 by 24 when it didn't have all this sand covering it. By the way, for those of you who are interested, there's kind of what has happened. The dunes have shifted, and that walkway has been there. I think it was built in '87, and so the dunes have overcome us, and we do kind of need the DEC to help us, but it's kind of silly. On top of everything else, the wood that's on the deck, if you look at picture number 2, you can see how far the highway department came in replacing the boards on the deck, and that was 2 seasons ago. No more progress was made, and of course I've never finished the last part that leads up to the part that's covered by sand. But I think the wood really is going to deteriorate, and you may find out that it's rotten, and then something happens down there that you really don't want to have happen. But I really would like to either get permission to shovel their sacred sand aside so that we can expose the deck and let the air get at the boards. And I personally feel we'd be well advised to try and raise it 2 or 3 feet and maybe build it add 8 feet to the back of it or something. It does get used, and as I said to you once before, I'm told that there are more weddings held down at this location than at any of the local churches. So in any event, Steve, if you can get them to
spoken to
us.
John, and he's trying to get a date together with
Maybe
somebody.
Mark could be with us or something if possible, and certainly you, and I'd love to
Yeah,
be
John's
there.
working on it.
If Nancy could be too, that'd be great. But I would appreciate that, and that's all I have to add to the.
Yeah, and again, I just wanted to second what you said about Vivian, and he will definitely be missed, and it's a very large presence around him. But I also would like to say that on Friday, April 18th, at 10 o'clock in the morning is the PBA's Easter egg hunt at Agawam Park. Got to get there. At 10 o'clock it goes, and at 10:01 all the eggs are gone. So it's a lot of fun. So, but I encourage families to be around here to get down and do that. So. But
See the eggs is fun.
just to see, yeah.
All
see-
over the
I
park.
know. It's a great time, so. So with that being said, we have a second public comment section. Anybody from the public? Yeah, Francis, just going up too.
Just a few comments. I forgot to say before that I read in the paper that Sag Harbor was under threat of getting a CVS, and the board denied the application and then immediately went and revised their entire zoning code to avoid that. So I think, especially in light of Mr. DePietris' comments about the insurance for the house moving, that something that was put in place in 1987 is surely out of date now for the new reality, while zoning that was put in place in the 70s, 10 years before that, is probably out of date as well. The second thing is I was interested to hear about the commercial parking, because I want to know then what situation covers the pictures that I've shown you where in front of the Corrigan property and the whole length of Dodge Street. Trucks are parked all of the time. It's perpetual. And huge trucks. Last summer there was a situation where about 100 huge trees were stored there on flatbed trucks for 2 or 3 days. So what situation covers that? What rule covers that?
I'm not sure. I think we'd have to look at the village code and speak to the building department.
Yeah, well, there is, of course, it's one of those sites, again, that is not regulated in any way. And the third thing is the meeting on the 22nd. There's some confusion as to what it actually is. I know it started out as a work session called by the attorney, Mr. Flanagan, to discuss the...
Well, that's a regular work session for the village board.
Is it, so that's only one of the items on it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and then what actually is on the agenda? I mean, how is it different, this? Is this a presentation of their application?
Would be answer any further questions, and any, Rick, would you like to make comment about that? Or?
It would be any further presentation that they want to make in relation to whether this matter should be referred to the planning board, or what the Board of Trustees should do.
Is it a further presentation? Have they, in effect, made a presentation? Was that
He was here in
preliminary?
January, that he came and
That was considered a preliminary
Well, he was-
submission, and this is going to be a...
They made a presentation in January.
Didn't they withdraw that?
No.
No.
No?
And then they were going to make a further presentation, and that's been
Delayed.
postponed by them a couple of times.
And so this will now be the completion of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a public meeting, it's open to the public, so
Yeah,
it's...
I understand.
but-
Thank
but
you.
It's not a public hearing,
But it's a public meeting, yeah, that's...
it's a public meeting, and I'm sure the board will allow public...
There's nothing anomalous about this, is there? I mean, this is a
No,
standard...
it's standard, yeah, standard
You
operating
know,
procedure.
The way this law was written, and I didn't write the law, but it's on the books, they have to make the presentation at a meeting of the Board of Trustees. And that's the way the code happens, that particular code provision happens to be worded. And so the presentation was made, and as you will recall, we were not even really familiar with what it was all about, because
Yes, I recall you hadn't read it, so it was shelved. And then did it ever appear again?
it's been postponed 2 or 3
So
times.
it'll be on the 22nd, that presumably everybody will have read it, and this will begin the, okay, thank you.
Jim?
Foot went
All
to
right.
sleep.
Okay. We know that, we understand that, we relate to that. so.
I stayed awake, but my foot didn't. I have a question about resolution number 4, and I'm sure there's a very logical explanation, but why is the village hiring an attorney for the village general election? Is it,
We've had
Why is that done?
Well, we've had issues in the past where certain candidates have been represented by legal counsel have challenged a variety of issues associated with elections. And so what we've chosen to is the village has chosen to hire somebody or put somebody on standby in case a situation arises and we need legal counsel in reference to village election.
Okay.
Rulings have to be made on the spot, because it's a one-day election day.
so there's no conflict of interest or?
There's no conflict, this is a neutral party that's hired by the village board.
The village has done this for quite a number of years now.
I guess that's a common practice with other municipalities too, I guess.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve, we can take these out of the book, right?
Oh, sure.
You might be, Michael and
Yeah,
Mark,
no.
take
Yeah.
these just so you'll
I'll
have them.
send, I have notes to send on.
Oh, okay,
I'll send copies
okay,
over.
great,
Yeah.
very good.
Anyone else would like to make comment? Joe?
Just a quick question. You had mentioned about those 2 pumpers that are being purchased?
Yes.
And you said that the town is going to pay half. Is that correct?
We have in our contract with the fire district that they pay, and part of the monies that they
Right.
put go towards the capital budget.
Capital.
I'd said half, it's more like 40%, I think is the breakdown.
So it's
The-
40/60.
It's 40/60 is the number, I was incorrect on that, so,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to close the meeting and for adjournment since we have no executive session.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.